Hey folks, what is going on? This is episode 728 of the First and Frame Rate Show. I am VF Baller. Over here we talk about Georgia Southern and Atlanta Falcons football. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some really good news. Georgia Southern was able to pick up another quarterback. Tyler Budge was the only one that was on the list that Georgia Southern recruited, but we ended up getting a Power 5 quarterback, a quarterback from Indiana, Dexter Williams the second. I am really excited about this because he has Power 5 experience, and to be quite honest, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the first time that we actually have a Power 5 quarterback into Georgia Southern. Correct me if I'm wrong. I can't think of anyone else. I was going to say Jabo Shaw, but I keep getting him mixed up with Connor Shaw. But that's a different story. But nevertheless, we got a pretty good prospect here. He has 3 years of eligibility, and this is good to see. This is really good to see. But I'm gonna give you my thoughts and opinions on this and the other quarterbacks that we have in the on the roster, because with this being with this happening and Dexter Williams II being an addition to the school, I'm not necessarily sure if this is something that's really to jump out at and say, okay, everything is good. We're going to look at the rest of the roster really quick as far as quarterback. So if this is your first time here, welcome. I could be found on YouTube and Rumble. I am also on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. I also can be found on X at VF Baller. Over there, I talk about things that don't make it to the show. Also, the website is firstandframerates.com. If you want to support the show or help the show grow, Cash App and PayPal links are below. It would be really awesome if you would try to support in any way. Just it doesn't have to be monetary. Just supporting the show, listening, watching, and sharing is really, really cool. Now let's go ahead and get into this because Dexter Williams has a pretty good history as far as playing football. When you look at him coming out of Macon, Georgia, not too far from Georgia Southern, I mean, once again, you're probably looking at about an hour and a half away, 2 hours at the most. And I mean, that's pushing it. If you don't know how to drive down 16, I mean, I-16 is it's a terrible interstate, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, that's a whole different, that goes beyond the scope of the show. But nevertheless, you're talking about a kid who's played very well at Mount DeSales Academy. I think I said that right. Really good player, two-time Region 7A Offensive Player of the Year, 3-time All-Region honoree. I can go down the list of all the things that he's done. I mean, you're talking about, a guy who's completed, almost 63% of his passes, collected over 5,000 yards of total offense, and 61 total touchdowns. I mean, this is really, really, they're not. I think that was in his last 2 seasons at quarterback. So that's really cool. He was ranked number 21 as the number 21 dual threat quarterback nationally by 24/7 Sports. Now, he goes to Indiana. Didn't get to see much playing time because the injuries or whatever, which that's kind of concerning. But hey, if he's upright, if he feel like he's ready to go, I'm not against it. Whatever the case may be, injuries are injuries, they happen. But if he can go, he can go. He was good enough to be the starter at Indiana a couple of times. And he played pretty well. The stats aren't nothing to jump out at, but the fact that he was around to get that much attention and a look from a Power 5 coach and was able to start a few games, I mean, there's nothing bad about that in particular. I think that is really cool. Now, what gets me a little concerned are 2 things. First and foremost, I'm not going to knock on him with the injuries, but the best ability is availability. I mean, just because he had injuries before doesn't mean he's going to get injured now, but it's something, as a fan, I do think about. And the second thing is he's a dual threat quarterback in an air raid offense. How does that play out? Does he, do they design plays for him to run in an air raid offense? I'm not saying that I'm not saying that can't happen, but it's not really ideal. Do they change things for the offense? If you look, you'll get a really good idea of who's going to be starting at quarterback if they do change things. Once you see around the spring game, or if you start to see things when it gets closer to the season, when you hear about they're switching up a few things of what they normally do in press conferences, you kind of get an idea who they're going to roll with. Now, I know there's a lot of people saying that JC French should be the guy. He's seen the most action outside of Davis Brin last year. My personal pick, and I will stand by this, and it's okay to disagree or whatever the case may be. I want Colton Fitzgerald to be the starter of the team off the rip. I want him to be going into the spring training as QB1. If he doesn't make it to be QB1, that's cool. But I feel like with Fitzgerald having the most experience, being here since Kyle Van Treese was around, and he knows the offensive system probably, well, he has the most experience with the offensive system better than any quarterback we have now. I think it'll be just by default, they should give him the reins and for him to actually be QB1 and let the chips fall where they may if somebody, outperforms him, if they beat him or whatever the case may be. It's cool. I get it. Me personally, I don't see him getting outplayed for it, but that's up to the coach's decision because I think he's a fine quarterback. And I think for overall, I think we have a really good problem here, a very good problem with the quarterbacks we have now. Even when you talk about Tyler Budge, David Dallas, even Kobe Walton, you're talking about what, maybe 6 quarterbacks that at least 5 of the 6 could probably get some playing time. And I will say this, I think they'll be better than, decision making than Davis Brin. Davis Brin, threw to the other team, but him and Desmond Ritter's been talking, but that's you know how that goes. But I like I said, I think this is not a situation where nobody would be wrong. Even if you're a French fan, if you want Fitz to play, and even if you want, Williams to play, hell, even if David Dallas is healthy and he play, I don't think you're going to get a Kobe Walton. You're not going to get a bad answer. Nobody's going to sit here and say, "Oh, I don't want to say." I don't see a wrong answer in none of this. This is probably truly, I will say this, even ever since Coach Clay Helton has been here, even the first year when we had all those quarterbacks that came in here, but I think this is the first time we can say that we probably had the best quarterback lineup that we have right now. And I'll say that since probably the entire history of Georgia Southern. Because Georgia Southern was a different type of breed when it came to quarterbacking. This one here, you got guys on this team that can flat out throw the ball. I mean, you got guys from Williams all the way down. I've seen tape on Budge. I've seen tape on Walton. I've seen tape on Dallas. You already know what JC French can do, and you know what Fitzgerald can do. You got guys that can throw the football. So even if if any of these guys decide if they end up QB1, you're in good hands. But I just feel that just by the experience, this guy, learn how to be true blue. A guy who's learned how to pay their dues as being, patient as possible. I just don't see where you don't put Fitz in there. I just don't see it. At least give him a shot and see if he can get it. I think the last 2 years, I don't think anybody really got a chance to be QB1 the last 2 years. Kyle Van Treese is coming in. It is what it is. Then you had Colton Fitzgerald behind him. He stayed around. You had Zach Roseman that was here. He was gone. Davis Dallas was around. He got hurt. And then you got a couple other guys. Sigelski was here. What happened with his situation. Then you turn around and the following year, you bring Davis Brennan, but you end up getting J.C. French. You got Bo Allen. You had Kobe Walton. You still had Dallas. You still had Fitz. You still had a handful of guys who actually, they still, pretty good. But once you take Brennan out of the picture, you start taking Bo Allen out of the picture. And you bring in, a Budge. You bring I forgot what's his name as well. Pango. I think he was another guy from Augusta. I think he moved to wide receiver though. But like I said, you got all of these guys that are here, and I think this is the first year that everybody that's a quarterback right now, everybody can can actually sling the ball around and actually, be effective in this air raid offense. Even with Williams, he's not familiar with this offense as far as I see. Maybe I'm wrong, but he can get acclimated. He can use his instincts. He can move around a little bit. J.C. French is another one that can move around a little bit. I'm not too sure about Fitzgerald, but I know one thing: he's an accurate passer. I've seen him throw the ball a little bit. He does look good. So, and I think he's the one with the most experience in this offense. Obviously don't have the more experience than Williams, but he has the most experience in this offense. I think going in is probably the fair shot for him to be QB1 and let the chips fall where they may. Before I get out of here, I will say this. One thing I do not like, though, if Coach Clay Helton do pick a QB1, he likes to stick with that person throughout the entire season. He did it with Calvin Treese. He did it with Davis Brin. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know the whole reason behind that. Maybe the other guy's just not good enough. Even if that being said, I still think going into year 3 in this system, going into year 3, I think Colton Fitzgerald does have the experience to run this offense. So there's not really an excuse not to have, a one person just stick on under center the entire season when you got a guy who knows the offense. I mean, is it a problem? Do you guys think he's not retaining the offense? I think he is. I don't see what there's a reason why he's not, but hey, what do I know? I'm not down there. I'm just going by what I've seen and what I've heard. I mean, this kid has done everything correctly, and I don't see why he wouldn't be. But when you bring in guys like a Williams, when you bring a guy, like a J.C. French, French came from Memphis, I think. Then he came from Memphis, and you got a couple of guys who came outside, and they may be a little bit more talented. I mean, I'm not 100% sure you put those two next to Fitzgerald. I mean, what kind of quarterback situation you got? I mean, do you got somebody who's light years ahead of everybody else? I mean, was Davis Brin that far ahead of French and Fitz? I mean, you got to think about it. I mean, what kind of quarterbacks we have here? I don't see too much of a difference, with Fitz or French or whatever the case may be. I just think with experience and you've been here longer, you would tend to go with the guy who's been here longer. I mean, I just thought that was, is almost by default. I mean, maybe it's something I don't know. And I'm okay to say that. But I just think logically, I think that would be the choice. But nevertheless, Dexter Williams from Indiana comes back home from Macon, Georgia, comes back home to play for the Georgia Southern Eagles. It's going to be really interesting to see how this quarterback situation plays out. I'm not against Williams playing. I think he's going to be just fine. You can't go wrong. But it's just the lack of experience. And I'm not necessarily going to use the injuries against him, but it's something to think about. But 3 years of eligibility. I mean, look, maybe he can take over this thing, and hey, look, if he does and he does well, we all win. So I mean, I'm not against it either way. So I think it's a good look. So y'all guys let me know what you think in the comment section on the YouTubes or hit me up on X. Just let me know. So if you like this commentary, hit the like button, share this podcast, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't forget, if you're on Apple Podcasts, give me a 5-star rating, man. Let people know how things are going here. Share this podcast. We talk about Georgia Southern. We talk about Atlanta Falcons. And right now, we're like in the middle of the road of all of this. It's kind of crazy with both teams 6-7 and the Falcons 6-8. I mean, it's like we can't get out of our own way just to stay 500, right? It's kind of crazy. I can be found on YouTube and Rumble, also on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. I could also be found on X at VF Baller. The website is firstandframerates.com. And if you want to donate or support the show, CashApp and PayPal links are below. And I will see you guys on the next one. You guys take it easy, and y'all be blessed. Peace.